Hello, authors. I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's episode is with adult and children's author Michelle Ellie Royce on Going Hybrid. After being traditionally published for the first lot of her books, Michelle shares with us why she's taken the plunge with her new junior fiction series and started publishing her own work, and shares tips to authors looking to take the plunge into having a hybrid author career but are still teetering on the edge. So in my author adventure this past week, I've been writing up a storm in my junior fiction series, but I don't want to go into too much detail here. I just wanted to let you know that I am and I have been busy writing, and I've really been enjoying the process, which will say a lot about the series, I hope, and more to come on this in the coming weeks. So Book Week is fast approaching here in Australia, and I'll be attending the Children's Book Council of Australia CBCA Book Week opening dinner, which is next Friday. I generally have been attending that for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a really great night, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with the book community, enjoying a lovely meal, and generally just having a gay old time with friends in the industry. I just need to get my costume sorted out, and I'm also very excited to find out which books are going to win this year for the CBCA and the categories, because I went to the judges' talk and I've been slowly making my way through the list, reading the books, and they're really fantastic. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at www.buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor. Capital T, all caps hybrid, and capital A for author. So the links for that can be found in the show notes and at the top of my social media pages. So hopefully by me adding this link in these areas, you can simply click on it and go to the page to let me know. Or you can leave me a review. Pay it forward by leaving me a review on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on. Nothing big, just a line or two to let me and others who write like you know how the podcast is helping further your author career. Let's all support each other. So that's enough from me. Let's crack on with the episode. Michelle Royce is an internationally published, award-winning author of books for adults and children. As Ellie Royce, Michelle writes quirky and heartfelt middle grade and YA fiction, as well as visionary, unique picture books that spark ideas, empathy, and new ways of looking at the world for readers of all ages. Michelle is also a storyteller, author, speaker, and independent publisher, presenting sessions on storytelling for well-being as an arts and health advocate and practitioner for small groups, as well as speaking at conferences. Incredible bio, Michelle. Welcome to the Hybrid Author podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe it's happening. I've listened to so many fabulous episodes, and now here I am speaking on one. It's amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. And we're so glad to have you. You've achieved so much. Where did you get your start into writing and publishing?
Well, it sounds fabulous when you read it through in a bio. When you consider that I'm a lot older than a lot of other people, I guess, in the industry, I guess that's where I've been able to put a bit of experience together. So like a lot of other people with their start, I'm a book nerd. I've always loved books and stories ever since I was a little kid, reading Enid Blyton's Secret Seven and Famous Five under the stairs in my house, which is now, very famous for a lot of other reasons, under the cupboard under the stairs. But we had one of those, and that was my little cubby, and I'd go in there with my books and didn't have ginger beer, but I'd get my cordial and my book and my apple and go and sit under the stairs and read Secret Seven, Famous Five, and all the Enid Blyton books when I was a little kid. And actually it goes back even further than that, really, because my great-grandmother, Lucy Jane Moore, was also a lover of books and stories, and she used to write, over 100 years ago now, used to write children's stories for her newspaper, and it was published in the Uncle Remus section. This was in Adelaide many, many years ago. And she had 8 kids, and she still found time to run a corner shop. And in the corner shop, she had one of the first public lending libraries in South Australia, because she loved books so much that she wanted them to be part of her life. So somehow she managed to squeeze that in, juggling 8 kids and a business and looking after her family. And my mum has actually also written children's fiction as well. So, yeah, it sort of runs in the family, I think.
Wow.
I think maybe I couldn't have avoided it, perhaps. Stories run in our blood somehow or other.
That's an incredible story in itself. I love that. And what a picturesque, vision to think of yourself under the stairs. Enid Blyton and obviously Secret Seven seems to be definitely a point for a lot of guests I've had on. That's they've loved that sort of story. But yeah, it sounds like it's in your blood.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, books and storytelling has always been part of my life. And as I often say nowadays, I got myself into trouble storytelling to the detriment of myself when I was younger, because I didn't know how to use the power for good instead of evil. And I used to tell a lot of stories that either people would believe when they weren't supposed to, or they didn't believe when they were supposed to. So yeah, got sent to the corner for telling my grandmother that I'd flown around the world on a broom and getting very upset that she didn't believe me. And then in year 3, telling all my friends that I was actually a spy who in the school holidays went off and solved mysteries and things like that, which was just meant to be for fun. And they did believe me and got quite cross when they found out that it was just a story. So it took me a little while to get my act together and start learning how to frame stories in the right way so that people could appreciate them. But yeah, they've always been there somewhere in the background. So it was inevitable that I would eventually try and get something published. And I think I sort of went off fiction, maybe even for that reason. I went off fiction for a while. I did a lot of freelance writing of features articles when I was in my 20s and 30s. And then I had 2 small children and moved to the country. So I still did that a bit sporadically. And then as my daughters grew up, same story as a lot of people seem to have, rediscovered my love of fiction and started volunteering in their school library. And that was a great excuse to hang out and read all the kids' books. And yeah, that just rekindled my love of children's fiction. And I started writing again, writing fiction, which was wonderful because there's so much less research that you have to do in fiction. I actually had a non-fiction book published before that. So my first book that was ever published was a non-fiction book, 365 pages of women's well-being, more or less. And that required a lot of research and a lot of bibliography and all of that sort of stuff. So when I started doing fiction, it was just like, wow, this is great. The freedom. I can do anything. I can make anything up, any world I want, anything at all. So it was aimed at the ages that my daughters were. So they were at the time about 8 and 7 and 9. So the first books that I had published were middle grade novels in 2008 called The Letter Books. And they were published with ABC Books as they were at the time. Now they're an imprint of HarperCollins. And yeah, they were just books about girls at school, what happens, real life. They're still around today in libraries. Then the kids grew up, we moved, we built a few houses. I got really busy, didn't write for a while, started working full time. It wasn't until 2013 that I started writing picture book form and fell in love with it and discovered that it was actually the most fiendishly difficult thing to do well. And I love a challenge. Like another one of your guests recently said, I'm a bit of a stubborn person. So I just sort of whacked away at it. And it was like Tetris, you get a bit here, you get a bit there, you learn a bit here, you learn a bit there. Did some courses. So it took me a while, but eventually I got a picture book text together and sent it to my agent, and that was published. That was my first picture book, Lucas and Jack, in 2014, which was inspired by the work, my day job, which is working with older people and their story. Fantastic. So that was a great project to work on.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've had an adventurous start into the industry for sure. That's incredible. And I have also heard that although picture books are smaller form, they don't be fooled. They are extremely, because you've got so little space to work with. It's, got to be perfect, and it's harder than, say, a longer book. Yeah.
Yeah, they say every word has to work really hard for its space in the manuscript. And it took me a long time to understand the synergy between the text and the illustration, because when you first start, you do a lot of writing a description, and then you realise that you just have to chop it back, chop it back. In the end, that becomes quite addictive, and sometimes you chop it back so much it makes no sense whatsoever to anyone. So then you have to put it back a little bit as well. So it's a bit of a fine line between taking out and leaving enough in so that it makes sense and conveys what you're trying to.
That's amazing. Pedaling back a bit, you've obviously, done lots of different forms of writing and, found yourself in the picture book format as well for middle grade. So finding your agent, where was that about? Was that the first book that you put out for the nonfiction that you got picked up by an agent, or did that?
No, that came about through my freelance writing.
Right.
And then when I started writing the fiction, I've actually also been working on a YA novel for many, many years that's been put away and pulled out. And I actually made an inquiry with my agent about that one, and he liked it and took me on for that particular book. And then I sort of put that aside and wrote the other ones, the novels, and sent those through. So that's kind of how that came about. I believe that I was contacting a publisher in the first instance about those books, and the agent and the publisher knew each other. So it was sort of a bit of another kind of a synergy where they came together, and then he agreed to represent my books after. Yeah. I think there's different kinds of agents, and I mean, some of them represent the author as a brand, but when we were talking, he said, I'll take your books and like one at a time. There was no pressure on me to sort of churn things out and keep up, which was lucky because there was a big gap between one and another.
So same agent for the picture books as well? Did the agent stay on there?
The middle picture book was that actually, so I've had 3 books. I had Lucas and Jack was the first one in 2014. Auntie Uncle Drag Queen Hero was book number 2, and that was published in New York. And I was working with another agent in the States at the time who got that one through. And at the same time as I wrote that, I wrote another text called Frizzle and Me, which was actually contracted through my Australian agent to an Australian publisher. But then at some point, the Australian publisher went through like a reconstruction, or the text was uncontracted, which was a bit upsetting at the time because I didn't know that such a thing could happen. And I know that at that time, a lot of other people sort of went through the same thing, and it was interesting. But then my agent got the book recontracted. So while I wrote the 2 texts at the same time, and they are sort of focusing on diversity, inclusion. They're a bit different because they had what we call rainbow families, so families outside what people consider to be the normal family unit of 2 parents and however many children. Auntie Uncle is actually focusing on a drag queen who is also someone's uncle, which is the case in many instances.
I love that. I haven't seen anything like that out there. So how did that come about, that picture book?
Well, I just wanted to do something a bit different, and I'm really all about what I like is incidental representation, is what the fancy name for it is, which just means that in Kidlit we want to see everything that's possible. We want everyone to be able to see themselves in children's literature. So there are plenty of kids who have LGBTQIA plus members of their families. There are plenty of kids who actually do have someone in their family who might do drag. And this particular person who inspired this story is someone that I worked with. He was of Spanish ethnic background and he had, I think it was 12 nephews and nieces. And then when he discovered his passion for drag, he was telling me about it one day, and I thought the story was going to be, and they all hated me and they didn't want me to do it, and they didn't want to have anything to do with me. But instead the story was, they love it. They love it when I get dressed up, and they love it. They love come and play with the hairbrushes, and we sing into the hairbrushes and we dance together, and and I just thought that's beautiful, because so much of our children's literature is about the challenge and about the overcoming of the obstacles. And I'm not saying that they're not there. I know they are, but I really wanted to show the other side as well, where there is love and acceptance and respect. Yeah, and people just love each other for who they are. And so the story itself, while it's called Auntie Uncle Drag Queen Hero, and it's about this person, it's actually not about them trying to get acceptance from their family or feeling left out. They're actually really loved, accepted and supported by their family, and it's totally something else that happens. Yeah, and I wrote that, and I wrote Frizzle and Me, which is another story about a rainbow family, and it actually came out of a conversation with my daughter. I was telling her about a story idea I had. It was about a mummy and a daddy, and she sort of said, how come there's not mummy and mummy? And I thought, oh, you're right. How come it's not mummy and mummy? Why am I not thinking? It challenged me to think differently, basically. And that was quite a few years ago now. It was the year before we had the same-sex marriage referendum in Australia. So it was quite a while ago, and I wrote them both at the same time. But Auntie Uncle Drag Queen Hero ended up being published first in America, and then Frizzle and Me was published later. And it was quite funny because Auntie Uncle came out in 2020, right at the very beginning of the pandemic, which meant that I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. Like a lot of other people have been through as well. The funny thing was that it was one of the first of the LGBTQ books. It's actually a challenged book in America now, I'm a bit proud to say. Yeah, so it was one of the first of those ones that came out that have now been coming out for the last couple of years. And when Frizzle and Me came out, one of the reviews, which was a lovely review, but it said something about jumping on the bandwagon, very, very needed to be jumping on this bandwagon. It was a lovely review, but it made me laugh because they were both written at the same time. It was just how it worked out that they came out sort of a year apart. So
yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like you've had this amazing, long sort of traditional career so far. Today's topic is about going hybrid. How did you find your traditional representation, like, your publishing experience? How did you find that as a whole?
Well, I'm really grateful to traditional publishing, and the way I look at it now is having had a bit of experience in the industry and understanding the challenge of publishing as it is and as it must be, and going to conferences and talking to other authors and listening to publishers speak and realising that they have a really challenging job to do because they get thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions all the time. And the fact that they have only a small amount, there's two sides to the story. There's the side to the story that on one hand, you look at it and you realise that only a few stories make it through the gate. Like there's the gatekeepers, there's the publishing industry. It has the publisher who may want to publish the book, but then when it goes to acquisitions and the marketing team see it, they might say, no, this author isn't new, they're reliable, but they're not new and fresh, or they're not a bestseller. So at the moment, we can't do that because it's not going to move the business forward. So there's that side of things. And then there's the other side of things when you look at it in a different way. That side of things to me is a little bit of a worry because it means that the stories, there's that wonderful speech called The Danger of a Single Story. And I have that very much in my mind because we need stories. We need different stories for everybody. Everybody needs to see themselves. Everybody needs to respond and resonate with something different. And if we can't get enough stories out there, enough different stories out there for people, then people are missing out, basically, is what I think. So what I would like to see is traditional publishing has become a bit more, especially the big publishers, has become more difficult, more unwieldy, I feel. The independent publishers have more flexibility and more ability to sort of turn around and try new things, which is great. And I've been fortunate to sort of see both sides of the story with that, because my publisher for Frizzle and Me, my publisher for the American publisher, Pow Kids, is a small independent publisher. Publisher for Frizzle and Me, Ford Street, are an independent publisher, a smaller publisher, award-winning for sure, but they're definitely a smaller publisher. And I feel like maybe that gives them more room to be a bit more diverse in what they take on. So from one perspective, I feel like the traditional publishing at the moment, the way things are, it's limiting the things that we can offer our readers. Again, on the other side, there's that pressure on publishers as well. I can imagine what it would be like, having actually gone through it myself now, gone through the process of doing a book. You can imagine what it would be like sitting there having thousands and thousands of submissions from hopeful authors that, really, really want to see their story published. And reason why I chose Avery to publish was because that's a story that's gone through an agent. It's gone to a whole lot of publishers. And for one reason or another, they said, oh, we love this, but we just signed something very similar. And that's the rigidity of their list as well. Like, they have a list, they have one thing, one kind of book that says one kind of message or tells one kind of story. They can't have 5 of those because it wouldn't be right for the business. So this book went, did the rounds and came back, and I sort of put it away for a little while, and then I took it out and read it again, and gave it to a few people to read with kids the right age. And they loved it. They really loved it. And I thought, this is a good little story. I think that people would really enjoy it if they had the opportunity to read it. So that's why I thought, and obviously now things are different than they were 3 or 4 years ago. Now it's not easy and it's not simple, but it's a lot easier to actually publish something. We have the resources to be able to do independent publishing. So that and a whole lot of other reasons, sort of milling around in my head. And I thought, look, what do I have to lose, really? Yeah. Let's just give it a go and see what happens. And not just write a book, but actually make a book and hold it in my hand. And my book nerdiness came out and said, oh my God, what if you could actually create a book, Dr. Frankenstein?
Yeah. Oh.
It's alive. So...
Oh, no, well, that's amazing. And obviously Avery's Hat-tastic Adventures is your junior fiction series. Taking that plunge and deciding to go hybrid and put the books out yourself, did you have concerns up front? Like, what were your thoughts about doing this, and how did you work through them?
One of the thoughts I had was, what are people going to think? How is it going to affect how people view me as an author? But in the end, I thought, look, I'm getting on in years. It's one of those things. I sort of thought to myself, on my deathbed, am I going to care? And the answer to that was obviously no. I did go through a stage, which I commented on in your comments for your podcast. I did go through a stage where I had almost got everything ready. I had it prepped and I had it ready. Well, actually, just before that was when I got another rejection for some work that I'd sent to a publisher, and I spoke to a publishing expert, I suppose, someone who's in the publishing industry, who more or less said to me, your challenge is that you're a mid-list author. And I had sort of got to the stage where I thought, look, I don't know. I don't even know anymore. Maybe I'll just put it all aside and carry on with life and do something else. Quit, basically, which is what a lot of people say. Yeah, I'm quitting writing books. That's it. I'm done. And we do that quite a lot. We quit and then we get back on the horse and go back. So I was kind of in that frame of mind when I actually listened to an episode of your podcast, as I said in my comments earlier, with Sarah Epstein talking about her self-publishing experience. And it was so inspirational and just lit my fire again. And I thought, yes, look, flip that around. You're a mid-list author. That can be a challenge or it can be a benefit. Use it as a benefit and see what happens. Yeah.
So what do you mean by mid-list?
Well, what I was told was that a mid-list author, the definition of a mid-list author, is someone who doesn't sell millions of books, is quite reliable, but isn't setting the world on fire. And so if a publisher has a choice between someone like that and someone who's got something new and fresh or something record-breaking or something like that, they're more likely, because of what they have to do and they have their business interests and all of that sort of thing, they're more likely to go with that, unless it's something absolutely amazing, which, obviously they're always going to go for that. Yeah, I sort of thought, okay, well, I'll take that and I'll make it a good thing.
It is a good thing. It's not a bad thing by any means.
No, that's right. Exactly. But I was, first of all, I was sort of like, oh, and then I thought, no, actually, that's a great thing. It's a great thing to be. And I would say too that I don't think I would have taken the step had two things are really important. Number one, I have a really good friend who is a gas illustrator and a professional book designer. Now, we worked on this project together. That's why I've done it, because I have her support. And number two, I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't had experience in the publishing industry already. And I sort of know the steps that you have to take. I haven't taken them myself before, all of them, except for the author side of things. But I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't done that. So if anyone was considering doing it and they hadn't been around the industry for a while, I'd really advise them to do a lot of research first before you do anything else.
Yeah, well, that's going to be my next question. Just what obviously coming from the traditional side, heading into the self-publishing, because a lot of times it's the other way around, or it's different these days. There's lots of things happening. But what are some or more of your tips for people, I guess, like yourself, who are sort of thinking about it for various reasons of their own, and then wanting to take the plunge, maybe vice versa. So obviously, being researched, being clued up on the whole process, I guess, being professional about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And do your research, find out what all the steps are that publishers do, whatever publisher you can do your research on. There's also a lot of information out there that I wasn't aware of. There is, as we know, we all sort of get stuck in our own little world, and we tend to not necessarily venture out of it. But when I did venture out of it, I found another whole world of people who were actually doing this and doing quite well and making their whole career independently published, not just self-published, but independently published work. And that's what they've done, and they've done it for a really long time. And I thought, my goodness, surprise, there you go. It's possible. When you see something is possible, then you realise that it is possible, and do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you're angry and upset. Do it because you really love your story and you've worked hard on it, and you've had the support, you've had it edited, you've done all the right things, and you've got it out there. And do it because, I guess that the really important thing is to do it because I don't want to sound preachy when I say this, but one of the most important things I've learned since I've been writing books is that we do it to maybe, we hope that there's some kind of income involved in it, but most of the time we write because we love the story. We want to write the story. We want to get it out there, and we think it's going to serve someone. We think it's going to touch someone or resonate with someone. We think it's going to make a difference in their day or in their life, or we think they're going to smile or laugh or be inspired, or so that's why you do it in the end. You don't, that the other stuff is kind of a byproduct of the creative process in the first place, I feel.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, it does. That's fantastic. Oh, just so good. How has Avery's Hat-tastic adventures been? How have you found working with the illustrator and putting the book out yourself? And how have you found it all compared to the traditional side? What's been the easiest and the best and the worst moments?
Well, I've loved it. It's been as I say, my inner book nerd has just come out and gone crazy, and just loved learning, because I love learning new things anyway, and learning about how to make a book is just the best thing in the world. Going through the process, there were things that I didn't love, like trying to get metadata organised, so all the information about myself and the illustrator and the book and what themes it fits into. I kind of liked it and kind of hated it at the same time, but then once it was done, it was good. I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not like editing, but it's kind of like when you have to write a synopsis or something, something inside your chest just goes, I don't really want to do this, but okay, I'll do it. So that was probably the worst bit. The best bit was actually, working on it with my illustrator friend, Marty Davies, might I say. She's very retiring, very introverted, as am I normally, but she's fabulous. And that was fun. We just laugh a lot all the time anyway, and it was great. It was great doing it. Some of the mistakes we made, it was so obvious. We're just so, we almost sent it off with this massively obvious mistake in it, and I just couldn't believe it when I found it. And I said to her, good grief, we almost sent it off with this giant mistake. And she just said to me, you've got to get out more. Because I was poring over it every day,
Yeah. How long was the process?
Well, it took a little while, because if you condense it down into actual, when we were working on it, it didn't take that long. It was probably couple of months, because I already had the story written. She had to do the illustrations. That took a while. So maybe that was 3 months, because we both work. So we can only do it in dribs and drabs. I would say, with my little period of funk in the middle where I decided to give up and not do it at all, which was probably 3 weeks as well. So, if you were just working steadily away, probably 3 to 4 months.
That's great.
From go to woe. But it was great. I really enjoyed it. And it is a bit addictive. You do start to think, oh, I could do this again, but I could do, and you could do it better and faster. It's like a second child.
Yeah.
For people who have had children, first child is very stressful and, am I doing this right? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? And then the second child's just like, they'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
They're eating dirt. It won't kill them. They'll be all right.
Yeah. And then the third one raises itself, I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard that, but I never went that far.
No, me neither, thankfully. Yeah. Well, tell us about the book. Tell us about the series.
It's about a little girl who really loves hats. She has a hat collection. She has 49 hats in her collection. And when I was thinking about the character of Avery, I was trying to think about something that made her quirky and special. And I remembered when my oldest daughter was little, and she used to wear it was like a 1940s sort of cloche hat. And she became this other character, and we had to call her Madame Sari. And she was just this other person. And I thought, hats are great. And I did a bit of research into them, and they're actually really interesting how wearing something, in this case a hat, actually changes our outlook. And people who are anxious can actually put a hat on and feel that they can go outside and feel more secure. People have lucky hats. They've done research where they do different testing on people wearing different hats, and there are certain hats apparently that make you go really well in testing, and there are certain hats that make you go not so well in testing. Figure that one out, I don't know. And I mean, they're just a great way of expressing how we're feeling, and a really creative way of just expressing our personality. So I thought, well, hats would be great for Avery. And then it was a matter of working out how weaving the hats into her problem-solving process would carry us through the story. So in the first one, How Does a Hat Save the Day? We have a few different things. She's a bit feisty, so she likes to take charge of the situation, and we have a bit of activism showing up in a community garden where the girls, Avery and her best friend Olivia, decide to stage a sit-in to save the scarecrow from being pulled down and dismantled. And then she has to do some problem solving and figure out what it is about the scarecrow that's making the birds not pay attention to him. And there might be a hat involved in the solution there somewhere, I suppose, but I can't give too much away.
Yeah.
That's a spoiler, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah. No, I get the hat thing. And also, like in writing, the analogy, you put a different hat on to write. So it's that whole thing of, hat on, focus, you're somebody else. You are like someone different to you. So no, that's great. Yeah.
Do I have on today? Which person am I today? What job am I today? Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
That's wonderful. So, what does the future hold for Ellie Royce, like with your writing and your books? Are you still publishing traditionally, or are you gonna keep going with the independent publishing and sky's the limit?
Yeah, well, I will absolutely, I'm turning 60 next year, and I will absolutely pursue every avenue, to tell as many stories as I can. I'll totally still submit work to traditional publishers and be very happy and grateful to work with them for as long as possible, as long as they want me to. And I'll probably also keep doing some other stories as well in the independent publishing, because I love it now. And there's a lot of stories that need to be told before I'm done. So I'll just keep going until people say, no, we don't want to see them anymore.
Oh no, that's amazing. So where can our listeners find your wonderful stories and you on and offline?
Well, my website is www.weareallmadeofstories.com. People could just sort of type Ellie Royce into their browser and usually it'll come up. I'm on Instagram as Ellie Royce Kidlit Author, and also We're All Made of Stories, and Facebook as Ellie Royce Author. So they can find me on Facebook as well. So I would love them to say hi.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Ellie. That was just absolutely lovely. It's so good to hear about your experience, and I know that will connect with others as well. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
So there you have it, folks. Some honest, happy hybrid authorship tips and tales from the very talented Michelle Ellie Royce, whose junior fiction series Avery's Hat-tastic Adventures, illustrated by Mardy Davies, is out now. So go get your kids a copy or yourself and just enjoy, because it's just a delight. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have award-winning indie-published children's author Nita Brown, who's going to deep dive into how to self-publish a junior fiction novel. Sticking with this topic for a little bit. So that's it from me. I hope you have a productive week on your author adventure. It's bye for now. That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.